Welcome to Missing Persons Uncovered podcast. We are switching things up a little today. The podcast has partnered with Lexis Nexis Risk Solutions to bring the podcast live to the National Missing and Unidentified Persons Conference this coming April in Las Vegas. We will talk more about the conference in a little bit, but first let's welcome Haywood Talcolve, CEO of Lexis Nexis Risk Solutions Public Safety.
Appreciate the opportunity. I'm looking forward to spending a little bit of time with you this afternoon.
Thank you so much. So I understand that you've been with the company for quite a while. So, our podcast is focusing specifically on missing persons. But before we go into that, I sort of wanted to know more about what brought you to LexisNexis and kept you staying there, because it's been a while since you've been there.
Yeah, well, we try not to talk about that, right? Because you're only as good as your last quarter. You're certainly only as good as your last year. But I've been at Lexis now for 16 years, and the mission here is just so compelling. We stop fraud, we catch bad people, we enable equitable access to government programs, and we make a difference in people's lives each and every day with our solutions.
That's it. That's great. And how within that 16 years, how have you seen that the innovation of technology change within the company? I mean, that's a huge amount of time where we've seen lots of changes in technology in general.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at it from two perspectives, right? There's one perspective, particularly on the fraud perspective. As technologies has evolved, criminals have gotten more sophisticated, they've gotten more organized,
Mhm.
and the tools that you need are so much more sophisticated than they were 10 years ago. I mean, 10 years ago, we were worried about an individual pretending to be somebody to try to get a tax refund. Now we're worried about a generative AI tool with a bot attack that will be used to systemically go into a system and steal at scale. So at one level, we are dealing not with individuals in this country anymore. We are dealing with very dangerous nation state organized criminal groups that are intent on disrupting our democracy and disrupting our systems. And we saw during COVID, of the $5 trillion that was let by the federal government, $1 trillion of it, 20% of it was fraudulent.
Wow.
So you have that perspective, and then you have the evolution of the technology. And one of the things that has become clear is just because you develop something today that works, it will not work in 36 months. I mean, we used to talk a couple of years ago about the use of identifying you via a facial recognition tool and comparing your face to, say, a driver's license. Well, now with the generative AI and the dark web, I can buy a license, put your personal information on it, and then use a generative AI tool to recreate you to bypass that system in 5 minutes. That didn't even come into people's thoughts. I remember when we first started getting into the space and we had the challenge questions. You remember that?
Yeah.
What color was your house?
Yeah.
The one that used to always bug me was, how much was your mortgage? $2,000, $2,001. I mean,
Yeah.
you couldn't even remember it. Like, all of that is just so completely obsolete now, driven by the criminals. And the next wave of this technology is that's going to be used for both good and bad, is going to be substantially more challenging to stop. And it also gets into how you find missing and exploited children, how you find those individuals that are harming children, whether it's via social media, sex trafficking, or other means.
And that's exactly it. I think, as you rightly said, it's the good and the bad, and you're tackling it on both sides. You're looking at it from looking at the offender side of how do we stop the fraud, but also using it for finding missing people and missing children specifically. And I know LexisNexis Risk Solution has various technologies that help in this matter, but maybe you could highlight one or two of those technologies that are being used currently or and have been used for a while now in this field?
Yeah. So every investigation starts with a victim.
Mhm.
And so the first part of it is having a conversation with the victim. And then you have to figure out who the perpetrator is. And so we have tools that allow you to find individuals where they live, friends, relatives, and associates. And that has a couple of benefits to it. The first thing is it can eliminate a whole bunch of people, right? And as you're going through the investigative process, as you're getting more and more information, as you're building your case file, um, you have more sophisticated tools. So one of the tools now, first of all, you need to go to a judge and you need to get permission, is the pulling of call detail records, right? So there isn't a criminal who's involved in any type of illicit activity that doesn't have a cell phone. And by using the court systems and getting call detail records, you can quickly find out if that individual was in the locations that the crime or the criminal activity took place. So call detail records right now are the rage. It works incredibly well. And, we've had some really good examples of locating children that are being exploited. We've also had just some horribly gruesome things,
Mm.
including the location of bodies of children that were murdered by these individuals. So that's definitely an important tool. Other types of things that are really important is data sharing. So when it comes to these individuals, it's not their first rodeo.
Most of
Um,
the
uh,
time, yeah.
I was talking to my friend this morning, Chris Hansen,
Hmm.
and he's just finished up a story or another series of To Catch a Predator down in Florida.
Hmm.
He had 250 people show up in a 3-day period. There are people lurking on the internet that want to harm children. So part of what we do is we provide data sharing. So an individual that is trying to harm a child, that is trying to exploit a child, like I said, it's not their first rodeo. Maybe they didn't do it in Lee County, where Chris's investigation took place. Maybe they did it in Broward or Palm Beach.
Right.
Being able, because there's what, 25,000 law enforcement entities in the US, being able to see that information and see if there's suspicious activity reports and other types of information and data about that person can be incredibly important.
Right. Data sharing is something that is vital, not just within the law enforcement community, it's everywhere. Because if you're keeping, we all have data, but we're not sure what to do with it, and we have incomplete data. So it's important that we are sharing it with our counterparts as well as with others in other jurisdictions to make sure that we can actually complete the full picture and understand what's actually happening. I think that's a great tool to have. And but one of the longest, and what we'll do is also at the conference in April, we'll go through some of more in more details with some of these technologies. But one of your longer lasting programs that you've had on missing children is the Adam program. Um, how has that evolved in and how has that come into, I mean, let's start at the beginning, what it is, and then maybe you can explain how it's evolved over those years.
So when a child goes missing, you've got like 6 hours.
Hmm.
And so you have to move incredibly quickly. And, the Adam program, just to level set, is dedicated to John Walsh.
Hmm.
Son Adam was murdered. And when he was murdered, none of this infrastructure, none of these tools were in place. And, John and Reve have committed their life's work to making sure that no parents go through the hell that they've been through. So it started off really simply. I mean, if you remember back in the 80s, all the rage was a fax machine, and it was faxing out the child's picture and information as quickly as possible, because you can't imagine how effective it is when millions and millions of people know who they're looking for, like notifying very quickly. And over time, it's gotten more sophisticated. It's text technology, it's web-based technology, it's geolocation technology. And I would encourage everyone, if you go to the NCMEC webpage, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, missingkids.org, and sign up for the program. You will get an alert immediately when a child goes missing in your geographical area, and then you become an individual that can help find them,
Right.
right?
Become
These,
part of the search, which is fantastic.
yeah, these children, like I said, you get 6 hours if it's a real situation. It's not a custodial thing, and we need every eyeball on it as quickly as humanly possible to
Mhm.
bring these kids home, to take them away from the predator that is trying to harm them. I mean, this has become increasingly important with some of the issues that are going on right now at the border,
Right.
where children are being brought into this country, brought to places like Las Vegas, where the conference is going to be held, like New York, and they're
Right.
being sold like
And they're sold, they don't stay in one place. They also are moved around the country, and therefore we need to have the whole country look for these children and distribute the information, the picture, the information, not just in one state or in one location, but really across. And that's what you do with your system and with your ability to geo target it, but also to have regional distribution, to say we know they're in the Northwest or we know they're in the Southeast. And that is a great way that you're reaching a lot of millions of people with that technology, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. You know, a lot of times too, like it was just talking recently to a police officer who had rescued a child out in the West Coast. And one of the parts of the conversation that really resonated with me is the child who was being trafficked
Mhm.
was being sold for, I think it was $80,
Right.
right? Didn't want to come back home, didn't want to be pulled out of the situation that she was in, because the individual that was trafficking her was threatening her family.
Right.
I mean, these sex predators, particularly the transnationals, I mean, what they will do to make money knows no bounds. And they, in many cases, have terrified these children that they're going to kill their mom, they're going to kill their dad if they say anything to anyone,
Mhm.
that their family and friends back home
Mhm.
will have a significant consequence.
No, absolutely. It is horrific. And it always, for me, it always surprises me how big the demand is on this issue. But let me ask you, what the other technology that you've used also in missing person cases is the Accurate Tracks analytics platform. Explain a little bit how that works.
Yeah, that was the call detail records.
Okay.
Right. Every single criminal, every single bad actor needs a mechanism to commerce, and that's that cell phone. And
Mhm.
getting a court order, you can very quickly locate individuals that are suspected of, you know, of criminal activity. And the technology works. And it's been used in many, many cases successfully, finding people. But
Mhm.
and then, you know, the other part of it is um, the sometimes the outcome isn't what you wanted.
Right.
Sometimes, unfortunately, the child's been murdered.
Mhm.
But at least for the parents, the ability to get closure, right, to locate the body, and to give justice to the family, that tool is just invaluable.
Yeah. No, I think it's important that we can give the parents as much closure as possible so that they understand that law enforcement and companies like LexisNexis have done everything possible to be able to recover the child or at least understand what happened in any instances. So with that, and I know we'll go more into at the conference, but um this is such a difficult topic. I always get to people always tell me, how is it that you can work in this field, and how do you look at life still in a positive manner? So how do you keep, as a CEO, keep your staff motivated when you're dealing with such difficult topics like missing kids and fraud and all of these offenders that are out there?
So the first thing is 99.9% of humans are just wonderful people.
Yes.
And there's a very small percentage that continue to exhibit very poor behavior. The second is just educating people on how to protect, like in this case, children,
Mhm.
right? Like in the old days, right? It was um, a lot harder for somebody that wanted to harm your kid, to get to your kid, to groom your kid.
Mhm.
But now with social media, the internet, you have essentially let the predator into your child's room using a device that you purchased as a parent and you enabled. So, like, some of the things that I think about is, well, how do you protect your kid? And the first thing is that device is not theirs. That you need to make sure that you know who they're really talking to, because on the internet, that person that says that they're 12
Right.
could be 25.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know of a teenage girl, because I got two, that doesn't have some challenges and her parents aren't fair.
Right.
Someone can come in and really begin the process of disenfranchising them.
Yeah. And
The,
and that's the tough part for us as adults to look back and say that any child is vulnerable, no matter how much we educate, but it's then giving them also the tools to be able to know how to react or what to do if. And I think that's the education part and awareness that we like to bring through the podcast, with awareness like these conversations, to showcase that there is stuff happening that the public may not always be aware of, but it is important that they know these resources are there to be able to help when they need help.
yeah. The other part of it, right, is right now there's legislation in front of Congress
Yeah.
to rein in some of the bad activity that's going on in social media, particularly targeting children. There was recently a hearing,
Yeah.
and during that hearing, you had some parents who suffered horrific consequences of their children, whether it was sextortion,
Mhm.
grooming, etc. And in the world that we live in today, information and analytics should be used to take those individuals off social media. Now, there's some people that argue that children should have privacy. And what I've argued is my 13-year-old has a very different level of privacy than, say, a 30-year-old. And because they're just not emotionally developed. And you can't, you need to understand and you need to appreciate what I've seen, what you've seen, what many people attending your conference have seen, which is the cesspool of individuals that are trying to groom children on the internet, asking a 12-year-old to take her top off,
Right. Or,
asking,
or
um,
just to walk out the door, they have the conversation and then say, let's meet. And the child walks out the door without any kind of knowledge of what will happen.
yeah, and the other part of it, that motivates me is I have a friend, her name is Alicia Kozak,
Yes.
And I've known Alicia for a long time through my work with NECMEC.
Mhm.
As a 13-year-old, she was groomed.
Right.
She was taken advantage of, and that was before the technology got good. And I think about, well, how do we at Lexis and how do we as a technology community build tools to protect children, right? And that's what motivates me. Like, this isn't a problem that can't be solved.
This Nexus perspective and from the work that you've done in this field, what would you want listeners that are trying to understand more about missing persons, missing children around the world, not just in the US? What should they know about LexisNexis risk solutions, and what can they do other than signing up for the Adams program in the US?
Yeah. So what they should know is the next generation of technology that we're going to unleash, generative AI, some of these chat GPT tools and some of these deep recognition tools are
Mhm.
going to make it extremely hard for the type of bad behavior that's currently going on today using technology. And I'm really excited about that. Um, you know, I really believe that with what we understand today and the technologies that are available, I think we can really make a huge difference. The other part here is prevention is so important, and educating your children and having those hard conversations. Like, you have to do that now because, like I said, when a child goes missing and it's an actual situation where it's non-custodial, it's that type of abduction, or it's a traffic type situation, you got 6 hours, and that's not a lot of time, right?
It's report as soon as possible. As soon as you know your person that you're looking out for is not where they're supposed to be, you should report. Don't wait. That's the most important part.
And for some chance, if there's some victims out there that are being trafficked right now,
Mm.
you're not alone. Regardless of what you've been told, call law enforcement, call the National Center. They will help you, right? They're not going to harm your parents. They're just trying to keep you captive. And like, there's a lot of kids out there right now that are really confused and they need to be brought home.
That's a perfect way to end, and I appreciate that message. I think it's important that we speak directly to children as well. And I thank you so much for your time to be part of this and sponsoring the podcast live at the National Missing and Unidentified Conference. Um, I wish you all the luck with it. I look forward to meeting some of your staff at the conference. And again, I appreciate your time and your commitment to missing persons and missing children.
Thank you for the opportunity, and good luck at your conference.
Thank you so much.